Today's court proceeding in Pennsylvania, a formality. But after agreeing to not fight extradition, the suspect in the murder of 4 U of I students will soon be back in Idaho. Then what happens? The third time was definitely not the charm for Republicans trying to pick a Speaker of the House. And for the first time in a century, votes with the party are split, and this decision will stretch to days. It could take days to get rafts to Idaho's rivers this summer if bus service to sections of the Salmon are suspended. River Guide outfitters are wasting little time to try to find replacement transportation to Idaho's backcountry. That is 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger walking out of a Monroe County, Pennsylvania courtroom after he waived his right to an extradition hearing. He was in court about 15 minutes, long enough to have the process explained to him by a judge, to sign some paperwork and then walk out, as you see there. He also mouthed something apparently to his family as he walked past them in the courtroom. Kohberger is accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students on November 13th. Waiving his right to an extradition hearing today means Kohberger will be back in Idaho sooner rather than later to face those first-degree murder charges. We did learn today from the Pennsylvania State Police they knew about Kohberger being in their area a couple of days before they served the warrant to arrest him. They said maybe 10 people were made aware of the situation, and they held that information very close so as to not tip Kohberger off. There were 3 warrants issued, one for the suspect, one for the white Hyundai Elantra, and one for his parents' home where Kohberger has been since before Christmas. And given the nature of those warrants, wanted for the murder of 4 people, they served that warrant at his parents' home at night for the safety of law enforcement, the suspect, and of course his parents. And in doing so, they broke multiple doors and windows to get into that house in the early morning hours of last Friday. Now, other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of other information provided about the arrest of Kohberger by the state police or even the district attorney's office in Monroe County because of the sealed arrest documents. The DA's first assistant called Idaho's law quirky, the one about not releasing the probable cause affidavit until after the suspect appears in an Idaho court. And apparently those documents haven't been made available to Kohberger either.
But having read those documents and the sealed affidavits of probable cause, I definitely believe that one of the main reasons the defendant chose to waive extradition and hurry his return back to Idaho was the need to know what was in those documents. So that's a significant development.
Interesting. The state police, when asked about the process to move Kohberger back to Idaho, Major Christopher Parris said it's not likely Kohberger will be on a plane by tonight, so it could be a couple of more days or so. But Abby Davis has been following today's developments and kind of looking into this process the past couple of days. So here we are. He's waived his extradition rights. Not likely going to be on a plane tonight, but what happens next?
Not likely, and that was something we did think would happen.
True.
He could have been back tonight, just in a few hours after his extradition hearing. But under Idaho law, he actually has 10 days to get back to Idaho. So a little bit of a rough timeline there, at which he'll make his initial appearance in court. And after that initial appearance, then he will face a judge. He will be read his charges against him. Once again, that's the 4 counts of first-degree murder and the 1 count of burglary. And then at some point, the judge will unseal the probable cause affidavit, which we have been waiting for.
It was interesting to learn that today that Kohberger hasn't even had access to those documents yet, but that's where we're going to learn a lot of information about how he's connected to this crime, maybe possibly some motive, and maybe, we hope, some way that they were able to figure out that this is their guy.
Yeah, and before then, we didn't know any of that information. The facts of the case had been sealed, and that was something they alluded to today in the press conference, was that may be one of the reasons Kohberger waived the extradition hearing today, was to get back to Idaho and to hear those charges and what was specifically in that probable cause affidavit. Once again, could be a possible motive or just, once again, those main facts about what led police to Kohberger.
One of the other things we learned today, we had confirmation that he will be using a public defender in Latah County. I believe a public defender from Kootenai County, still waiting on confirmation from that. But the public defender he had in Monroe County fully expects him to plead not guilty. Of course, that could change, but that's what we're expecting, correct?
Correct. So once he is back in Idaho and he has that initial court appearance, he has the right to a preliminary hearing, which he could also waive. So there are some options for Kohberger to take here. If he does waive that, then it would go right to a trial, in which case would obviously, or that wouldn't push the timeline back, but it just really depends. So lots of options there. And then Jason Labar, who was representing Kohberger in the extradition hearing, said that Kohberger believes that he will be exonerated.
True.
And will likely plead not guilty, so in which case would go to a trial.
Okay, so now we're kind of in that waiting phase of not knowing. We will not get any idea of when he's on his way to Idaho, by the way, because they said that's for security reasons. They do not want that information out there, as you can imagine. So we're just kind of in a wait and see, but we do know that we were told by Captain Anthony Dollinger of the Moscow PD this last weekend that once Kohberger gets back to Idaho and is set foot in Idaho, he should be back in a Latah County courtroom within 24 hours.
Yes, so it should happen pretty immediately, and we'll get things rolling, and hopefully we'll know what led police to Kohberger. Once again, get some more details very soon. And
we do have a crew on their way to Moscow right now, so again, with anywhere from 24 to even the next 72 hours, we'll have a better idea of what's happening up in Latah. Abby, thank you very much. I really appreciate breaking that down with us. Okay, so how long does it take to ask 434 people to answer just one question? A little more than 45 minutes, apparently. And today, the reading clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives has done that 3 times, and they still haven't come up with a majority vote for the next Speaker of the House. And for the first time in a century, the decision as to who will be in charge in the U.S. House took more than one vote. Kevin McCarthy from California was hoping to get the gavel, and he failed each time with the Republican caucus broken by a band of hardline conservatives. So here's why they're voting today. The midterm elections saw the Republicans take over the majority in the House. So Representative Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, has to give up the gavel, and they have to pick a new speaker. In those first 3 ballots, McCarthy actually lost to Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from New York. McCarthy went from 19 votes against him to 20 against him between the second and third tally even. So whoever wins will need a majority of the votes. Those voting in-house, 434 right now, they need 218 votes to get that majority. So what did Idaho's delegation do?
Fulcher, McCarthy, Simpson, McCarthy.
Yeah, Congressman Mike Simpson even showing his support on the floor today between that first and second vote, and apparently offering up a few zingers as well to kind of lighten the mood for McCarthy. You can see very, well, pretty casual and, lighthearted down there on the floor. No surprising, or not surprising, I should say, since Simpson made clear almost 3 weeks ago how he was going to vote today. Consensus, he said, the majority opinion of a group. GOP leader, that would be McCarthy, won 85% of the vote in our conference. He is the consensus candidate. We cannot allow the small minority who lost the election in our conference to hold us hostage, or it will never end. For the majority, it is McCarthy. If it takes 1 ballot, 10 ballots, or 100 ballots. And right now, we're kind of leaning toward that 10 to 100 ballot range. Then today, tweeting out a picture of himself, Mike Simpson did, standing next to McCarthy. I'm proud to stand by GOP leader McCarthy to support his bid for Speaker of the House. I will be here as long as it takes to see him elected, Congressman Simpson tweeted out. How long that takes? Who knows? Obviously more than 1 ballot, but maybe 10, maybe 100. 100 years ago, by the way, it took 9 votes for the Republicans to vote Frederick Gillett from Massachusetts as Speaker. The all-time record, though, back in 1856, when it took 2 months, 133 ballots to elect a Speaker of the House. There were only 31 states back then. The House voted to adjourn after those 3 today, after those 3 ballots, and after those 3 failed ballots, I should say. We did try to get Congressman Simpson to speak to us today about this process, his support for McCarthy, kind of what everybody's feeling at this point, but as you can imagine, he's kind of tied up for today. All right, well, speaking of politics, we're gearing up for the 2023 Idaho State Legislature. That starts next week. Governor Brad Little is going to have a State of a State also coming up on Monday. Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris is going to help break down what the governor sets forth for senators and representatives to consider in terms of potential legislation going into this session. As our coverage begins, 1 p.m. live from the State House right here on Channel 7 at ktvb.com, and we'll have it streaming, of course, as well at KTVB+. Maybe you're thinking it's too soon to be planning a rafting trip on the Salmon River. Well, not for the outfitters, who are having to replace a bus service that's been a staple of their business for years. All right, this is the part where we ask you if you have a question or maybe you have a comment, a concern possibly. You can text them to us. Just make sure they're clean, clever, and concise. And make sure they're about the 208. You know the number, 208-321-5614. Don't forget also your name and the hashtag, the 208. And stick around. We could share yours at the end of today's show. Being in the outdoors is an important part of being in Idaho. In Boise alone, the foothills and Bogus Basin make it an attractive place just to live here in the Treasure Valley. But for some more remote parts of the state, central Idaho, for example, large parts of the local economy depend on outdoor recreation, like a lot of depending on that. It's their livelihood. Rafting on some of those central Idaho rivers is meeting a logistical challenge. Caldwell Transportation served rafting companies in Salmon and Stanley for 21 years, but they won't be returning next year. Andrew Bartline learned it's leaving just a few months for these rafting outfitters to fill the need.
It's enormous. Yeah, the new year means the season's right around the corner. So about to finally get into frantic time frame, make sure that we are all set up for the season to come.
That setup is in and out of the water.
We really would struggle to try to do this in-house and would really need an additional partner.
The partner would be a transportation company. They're needed to drive rafters back to the start. And after working decades with the same company, rafting outfitters in Salmon and Stanley need a new answer for their busing needs.
21 years, Caldwell can't do it anymore. What changed?
Essentially what happened is the folks that have been running it all these years finally gave themselves the shot to retire. And with their retirement, nobody else in-house has decided to take it on. Honestly, up till very recently, we've just sort of been spoiled there because we've always had Caldwell, and they, like I said, they've just been a fantastic partner.
How important is something like this for these local economies, these local areas? Because when I drive through Riggins, it seems that every shop is about fishing or rafting. Is that kind of a common thread throughout some of these communities in that area?
During the summer months, especially, this really is their economy. These outfitters are really looking for someone that will be hopefully a long-term partner in something that is the #1 economic driver in the region.
Why is this kind of service needed exactly? Can you not go rafting without somebody driving a bus for you?
Providing our own in-house transportation, it would be a monumental shift for a huge contingent of outfitters in central Idaho. If we could find a third party that would like to come in and fill that void left, that would be more ideal for us.
What could happen if you don't find a company or a group that's willing to come in and do this? And, we roll around to summertime to where it's that season where everyone's hitting the river and your services are in demand.
Yeah, I think really there would be a pretty big offshoot of everybody scrambling to make do with what they can to alleviate the issue short term. Maybe van rentals. People are probably likely considering buying buses. A lot goes into these transportation companies. They're the pros, and that's why we want to work with them. Us in particular, and around 29 others. Essentially, it's the difference of us having to figure out how to be a transportation company as well as a whitewater rafting and fly fishing company, which, most of us would prefer to stick to what we've got 10,000 hours in.
Colin says peak rafting season starts in mid-May and lasts until about mid-September, so just about 4.5 months away. So they really need to figure this out. Between Salmon and Stanley alone, the question of transportation is impacting around 30 different companies. I imagine it fluctuates because when we talked with Colin, he wasn't narrowing down. He kept saying roughly about.
Roughly, yeah.
So 30 is a pretty decent number, what we've got from him and Steve Stubner as well. So it's a little bit up in the air right now, Brian. The services to keep these companies running, to make this work for a lot of different families, a lot of different people. I mean, it's tough to figure out because they don't know what to do. They're specialized in what they do.
Yeah.
Fly fishing, rafting. Well, who's going to be driving people, transporting them, gear, things of that nature?
Well, and I have to imagine that's a specialized skill as well, because some of these areas are pretty remote, and some of these roads, well, not really well maintained. And trying to drive a school bus is different, or any sort of bus, or a vehicle that holds a lot of people. It's different than just driving a school bus down some city streets. This is something that they're not just looking for any schmo off the street to do this, right?
Yeah, and he was explaining to me too, like when you're going down these rivers, you won't see a road for miles and miles and miles.
Right.
Sometimes the road's right next to the river. Other times it's far away and it's going deep into the woods, weaving in and out. And so in that position, it's like, we need a good group that can get this done. You rely on the same people for 21 years. He said they were spoiled. Well, now there's a problem they need to figure out. And they don't want to try to figure out individually, because if all 30 of them had their own internal transportation company, well, how efficient is that going to be?
Exactly. And plus, they don't want people driving their cars up there. I mean, hundreds of cars up there every summer. I was going to ask you, so are they looking for individuals, or looking for basically companies to kind of come in and say, we can do all of it?
They always say like beggars can't be choosers,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, if somebody wants to start up a company, I'm not sure they're interested in saying no to that. But I imagine an established group that wants to expand out there, they think they typically want about 4 buses in each place, 4 in Stanley, 4 in Salmon. So if somebody's looking to expand there, that's what they're wanting.
And Caldwell Transportation could get rid of a few buses, maybe, possibly.
Perhaps.
All right, thanks, Andrew. We'll be right back.
Cold temperatures and a good deal of cloud cover today. 32 right now in Boise after a high of 34 earlier this afternoon. 14 in Stanley, a huge improvement upon 14 below zero. That's where they started the day in Stanley. Overnight tonight, keeping the cloud cover intact, but it does keep our temperatures from getting as cold as they have the last couple of nights. So looking for temperatures to bottom out in the upper 20s by early tomorrow morning. And a warm front will move through, taking our temperatures a little closer to 40 degrees for valley locations tomorrow afternoon, which is closer to seasonal averages. Magic Valley, lots of cloud cover again tomorrow, looking for highs in the low 30s. Into the central mountains, we're looking for temperatures to top out in the 20s tomorrow. So not a huge jump in temperatures for our mountain areas. Good deal of cloud cover. Unfortunately, sunshine of the last couple of days taking a back seat for the next several days as we have a lot of moisture pushing in our direction. Now, the daylight hours tomorrow will be dry. You'll notice into the afternoon starts to get a little breezy with our approaching system, and then eventually we'll start to see some light spotty snow showers before it changes over to rain in milder temperatures on Thursday. This is the system that will be very impactful for California, but for us it just spreads a little bit of precipitation in our direction. So Futurecast showing that story there. Scattered snow showers, very light in nature overnight tonight over the Owyhees and eastern Oregon. But again, daylight hours on Wednesday, dry through southwest Idaho. It takes until the evening hours for that first light round of scattered snow showers to push into the region. And that continues very spotty in nature into the overnight hours until Thursday afternoon. It's all rain for valley locations, and we'll keep the snow levels above 5,000 to even 5,500 feet because of this mild air that's coming into play. It also gets a little bit gusty with our wind at times late into the evening on Wednesday and also again into Thursday morning. So even though our temperatures will be milder on Thursday morning, it'll feel chilly with a wind chill added in there with those wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Here's a look at how much snow we can expect for our mountain areas, anywhere from about 2 to 4 inches by the end of the week. And again, for the valley, we're just looking for more wet than white. Here's a look at a very active 7-day forecast, and the pattern looks to stay active and milder than average as we head through the next week, the second week of January, as well as a forecast to stay on top of, and you can do so at ktvb.com.
Active is great. All right, it's a new year. How about some old headlines like those from the Chalice Messenger, who claims to, quote, cover central Idaho like the mountains do, end quote. Great motto, by the way. All right, let's take a look back as they covered more than just the mountains on this day, January 3rd, 1923.
While the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. was taking its time picking a speaker in 1923, it took 9 times to get a majority vote. Who knows how long it took Charlie Vance to report a rich gold strike near Salmon. And a warning, in February, the government to do much road work in central Idaho. No word on if or when that much road work was completed or how much that much road work was. Oh, and 23 means skidoo, just not to your health, friends, and bank accounts. Still waiting for skidoo to come back as a catchphrase. In grooming news, men once plucked eyebrows. In case you were curious, throughout history, mascara, rouge, and other face painting elements were as popular for men as they were later for women, dating as far back as early Egyptian rulers claiming darkened eyelids made his eyes more beautiful. Wait till they find out what men pluck these days. Breaking news, ladies can wear shoes. No, it's not another right granted to women by men. It's an ad for Allen's Foot Ease Antiseptic Powder for the feet, preventing blisters, calluses, and sore spots. Like talking about women wearing shoes. How about items about people you know? John Turner is on the sick list. We assume he survived. Tea, but not just any tea. Silver tea was served at the home of Mrs. Kate Cameron. All were invited. Oh, and eat ranch butter. Meanwhile, from the state capitol, apparently there's more than a few tax dodgers out there with delinquent taxes amounting to more than $57,000. Allegedly, some people have not paid taxes for 20 years. And across the pond, in London, classes were held to teach children and some adults how to sneeze properly. But apparently you had to attend the class since no proper technique was offered in the paper. And your thought of the day from January 3rd, 1923, What a fine world this would be if all of us were as broad-minded as we pretend to be.
All right, final moments of the show. Let's get to your comments. This one from Jan said, I didn't know Congress's Speaker of the House, well, House of Representatives Speaker of the House, does not have to be a member of the House. Isn't that bizarre? Or even a member of Congress. That's true. Constitution doesn't say it has to be. It just has always worked out that way that it has since the beginning. Brian, could you delve into the DNA genealogy database used for the suspect at the U of I? This is the thing with this. This has been reported, but unless we hear from Moscow PD and in that probable cause affidavit, that is not confirmed just yet. And when it is, then we'll delve into it and see what we can tell you. We'll see you tomorrow.